Government Week in the National Council of Provinces, and we take a moment to reflect on local government, particularly in the context of the poor audit findings, which paint a picture of disdain for the law and tolerance for transgressions and transgressors. And joining me now is Nontando-Zintle Ngamlana, who's the Executive Director at Afesis-corplan. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Certainly an important week, especially when you look at what we have been seeing at municipal level, particularly around issues of, tolerance for wrongdoing and even, lack of accountability, as we have heard time and again from the Auditor General. When you look at a week like this, when the focus is on municipalities, is it even worth it, and does it drive the message home?
So thank you for having me, and it's quite an important question that we raised, right, around local government and whether a conversation such as the one that we're having this week, with it being Local Government Week in the NCOP, is even worth it. And we get into a place now where we as the public are feeling like it is just not worth it anymore, right? Because all of this talk and all of the interventions and reforms and legislative amendments, none of it is leading to an improved state of financial management in municipalities across board. I mean, the report from the Auditor General of the Local Government Audit Outcomes only came out a few weeks ago and paints a picture of disdain for the law and just tolerance for the ill state of affairs in municipalities. And so one kind of gets a sense that these conversations, wherever they might happen, whether they're in the legislature or in cabinet or at the level of strategic planning in the department, are just not translating to change.
And Nontando, when you look at the reports that we saw, in fact, this year from the Auditor General, is certainly not a new thing, because we have been seeing the regression over some years now. But when you really zoom in closely, where are the wheels coming off?
So you're right? And I mean, local government celebrates 20 years this year. So the post-transition local government is now 20 years on. And much as local government has improved in many areas of service delivery, but finance management is a key indicator of good governance. And that local government's regressed for years in that particular outcome is indicative of weaknesses in governance. And so the biggest weakness is oversight at various levels, right? At the level of administration, at the level of council, at the level of external bodies that are meant to give oversight over local government. So oversight generally in local government is weak. And when we talk about oversight, we're not necessarily talking just about the reports, right? But it's also about the quality of information that's in those reports, transparency, and the mechanisms that we have to hold people to account. I'll give you an example. Generally in local government, there just are no consequences for wrongdoing, right? And so people would be found to have transgressed the law in one way or another in one municipality, and they're allowed to move on. And it happens whether they are political employees or whether they are professional appointees in the municipality. But there just is no consequence for wrongdoing. And we can talk about that in detail. And I mean, really, much as the law allows for us to hold wrongdoers to account, that it doesn't happen and hasn't happened. And there just is a culture of tolerance to transgressions and transgressors in local government is super concerning, and it is just a culture that's been allowed to fester and to grow over time.
And when you look at, some of the quality of the leaders themselves that are leading these municipalities, apart from them not facing consequences for their actions, but there's also a competence issue here. because they don't appear, some of them, to understand what they're reading. I mean, even the Auditor General saying that some, CFOs or some people that are meant to even be making sense of the financial statements are not even able to understand what is in front of them. Others are using, consultants to come in, and consultants are then the ones that are finding themselves accounting to the auditors. Certainly, it does look like the quality of the leaders that are also heading up these municipalities is something that needs to be looked into.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But that is orchestrated, right? So that is not a chance occurrence in municipalities. It's a targeted, orchestrated state of affairs that allows for incompetent and sometimes ill-capacitated individuals. And when I say this, I don't take away from the fact that there are skilled, competent, really capable and doing well officials in municipalities, but those are far and few in between. The majority are dancing to the tune of an invisible hand in municipalities. And that is a hand that we don't talk about in detail. And that's a hand, the big elephant in the room, that in all our conversations, we don't confront in detail. And so in decisions or in decision-making structures in municipalities, there is a big political party influence. And that influence drives procurement, it drives senior appointments, and kind of orchestrates the state of affairs that we see, because it benefits nefarious activities and party political interests, and sometimes even personal interests of certain senior leaders. We begin to look also at the culture of political parties. I mean, political parties in South Africa have become such cults where even the members seem to be unable to hold their leaders to account. They seem to even be unable to hold them to account for the destructive manner in which they involve themselves in local government. And so the state of affairs and the incapacity that we're finding in municipalities is a matter of design. It's not a matter of chance.
And when you look at, the situation there, certainly some municipalities have been buckling under pressure and even financial pressure, because some of them even invested money in VBS, but others are now also going to find themselves under financial pressure even more, as some residents have lost their jobs during COVID-19 and are not going to be able to pay their rates and taxes. Where then do we begin to fix municipalities and to ensure that the conversations that are taking place behind closed doors are translating to these municipalities in order to try and really fix what you have just described as, one, a toxic relationship with, sometimes political parties, and also even the disdain for some of the processes?
So the state in which we now are finding ourselves is not one that we can address through structural reforms or legislative amendments or some strategic intervention, right? Because we've done that, we've had those. So we've had your Operation Clean Audits, your Back to Basics, your Cienza Manches. We've had so many of them over the years, and we've tweaked legislation, and we've produced so many regulations over the years, so much so that we've strangled local government. And so at this point in time, moving forward and in our post-COVID future and post-COVID reality that's looking quite bleak when you look at the revenue generation of municipalities and where we're finding ourselves in our country's economic state right now. We're in a place now where we're having to really ask ourselves critical questions about local government and about the invisible destructive hand in local government. And when I say this, I appreciate the role of political parties in a multi-party democracy, but local government is about service delivery. And I think we need to get to a place where we're asking ourselves what that means and what it looks like, and what insulating local government looks like. Because if we don't get that right, And if we do all of these other cosmetic changes that have led us to nowhere in 20 years, we're going to come back 10 years from now and we will be in a worse off position than where we're at now. And so the kind of conversation that we need to be having now is, how do we insulate local government? What does that look like? And those reforms have to be so drastic, right? Something needs to give and something needs to shift in a way that wins back local government for service delivery. Anything short of that will be just cosmetic. And cosmetic is what we've been doing up to now.
Yeah, certainly it does look like a lot needs to be done to really fix the problems at municipal level. That's Nontando-Zintle Ngamlana, who is the Executive Director at Afesis-corplan. Thank you so much for your time tonight. To this now, thousands of Israeli protesters have gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's official